morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Ryan Troop, and I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances at ERP Maestro and the moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, I did want to inform the audience that this session will be recorded and shared with you in the next couple of days. Thank you for joining us for a great discussion on how to effectively manage risks associated with third-party vendors. In a moment, I will introduce our friends and partners from AdaptiveGRC, who will be presenting alongside ERP Maestro today. In today's day and age, organizations are relying more and more heavily on temporary and long-term vendors to augment their workforce. As technology and business processes continue to specialize, we do not foresee a change in this trend. From what we've seen, many organizations handle security and risk of their vendors in a similar way as their own employees. And to that I say, it is great to have a level of trust and confidence in your vendors, but you may be exposing your organization to unnecessary risk. Our objective by the end of the session today is to point out areas in which you may need to enhance both your processes and tools to provide better oversight on your contractors and vendors across your organization. I want to remind everyone that throughout the presentation, feel free to send any questions on the GoToWebinar dashboard. You'll see a questions section, and we'll make sure to answer those at the end. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jan and Łukasz from AdaptiveGRC.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jan, and I'm a head of AdaptiveGRC product. A few words about me. 20 years ago, I graduated from the Military University of Technology in Warsaw, Poland, Cybernetics faculty. Currently, I'm directly responsible for consulting activities in the areas of IT security, audit processes, compliance, and GRC software delivery. I'm also a member of Polish community of blockchain technology with the main focus of setting up blockchain framework for all financial sector in Poland. It is worth to mention that 5 years ago, I decided to not only be, as a participant during conferences, but also to make an additional contribution and to be a public speaker in the areas of my expertise. And as I'm quite active in ISACA, PMI, and IIA organization, this year I had the pleasure to attend as a speaker ISACA North America CAX event in Anaheim and GRC conferences in Fort Lauderdale. And next month, I'm going to attend ISACA Europe CAX event in Geneva with the topic how to ensure vendor compliance and mitigate the risk of third parties. And Łukasz, now you're there.
Hello, my name is Łukasz Krzewicki. I work for CNF as Audit Risk and Compliance Expert. I have also a function of Adaptive GRC product owner. I am responsible for planning of new functionalities and development of our solution. I am ISACA member. I am certified information security manager and certified in risk and information system controls.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, Jan and Łukasz, for joining us today. And with that, what are we going to cover today? Today, we'll give a brief overview on both AdaptiveGRC and ERP Maestro, for those that are not familiar. Then we'll go into an overview of the two product offerings. This will help tee up our demonstration towards the end of the session today, where we will walk through an end-to-end review that you could perform on one of your third-party vendors. And at the end, again, we will retain some time for answering any questions you may have. If we do not get to all of them before the session is up, not to worry, we will make sure to email you with a response with our contact details. And with that, I will pass it to Jan to give an overview on AdaptiveGRC.
Thank you, Ryan. AdaptiveGRC is part of CNF company. We have more than 20 years of experience in information technology services delivery. We currently employ over 110 people, mainly in the headquarters of the company located in Warsaw, Poland, as you can see on the screen. But we have also offices in Heidelberg in Germany and in Denver, Colorado, just to serve to our customers located in the US. As a company, we are delivering 3 products and services. The first one is BI, big data, data management, and advanced analytics. The second one is, this is my product, Adaptive GRC. And the third pillar of our company value proposition is low-code rapid application development using OutSystem platform. As you can see on the screen, we have more than 30 active customers, mainly from financial and life science institutions, including some of Fortune 500 companies. Last but not least, we are delivering 24/7 support for our product and services. This is just to show you that in 2017, Adaptive GRC was mentioned by the Silicon Valley Review as one of the 10 fastest growing GRC providers. The link to the published article will be distributed to all participants after the webinar.
Thank you, Jan. ERP Maestro. For those that are not familiar with our firm, we are a SAP access control solution. We offer a cloud-based solution that hits on all of those functionalities required for an access control tool. So that includes robust reporting of segregation of duty and sensitive access risks across your user and role population. It includes the ability to perform user access reviews. We also have functionality for firefighting and provisioning of your end user population across your SAP landscape. We were founded in 2013, and at this point have over 100 customers spanning every industry out there. Besides our end customers, we also have a number of partners, both in the audit space and consulting space, that leverage us for a variety of different use cases. Some use us as a tool to provide more thorough internal and external audits, and others will use us for providing risk assessments and being able to identify risks and vulnerabilities across their customers' landscapes. With ERP Maestro, you are receiving a out-of-the-box set of access risks that have been vetted by the Big Four audit firms, many of our consulting partners, and our in-house expertise. This provides you with a picture of your access risks very quickly. We're talking about an hour or so implementation, and then you're able to scan and see what risks may lie. Not only are you able to very quickly see what risks might be populated across your landscape, you're also able to take that next step and figure out how might I remediate and rectify these issues. And to the right there, you can also see a number of our recent awards and that we are a SAP Silver partner. And with that, we will begin with a product overview of Adaptive GRC.
Okay, this is, I will explain the Adaptive GRC in a nutshell, because as the most part is just the demo of the system, how it's worked based on specific business case that will be presented later, then I will highlight only the most important parts. Adaptive GRC is a consolidated platform consisted from business modules like Enterprise Risk Manager, Audit Manager, Compliance, Quality, or Document Manager. It is important that, as you can see, all the modules are interconnected. This means that you can start using the solution from something small, tangible, for example, 5 users in the Audit Manager, but later, if this will be justified by the business needs, other modules can be quite easily switched on. As you can see, you can do the verification against common regulations like ISO ones, country-specific like FCPA, GDPR, industry-specific, or even internal regulations. Our platform is very flexible. Then we have decided to include a very nice feature named, you can see the square on the right, called virtual modules. I will explain it on the next slide. Okay, Virtual modules, they are just based on the framework that we can configure new modules based on existing features to support business processes. For example, we have configured Adaptive GDPR to support the data privacy regulation, very popular in Europe, named of course GDPR. Adaptive Bion to support some local regulation. Adaptive MFK to support the requirements of 2 lines of defense. And last but not least, Adaptive Audit to support all audit needs from small to very big teams of auditors or controllers.
Thank you, Jan. And now I'll provide an overview on the ERP Maestro product suite. I touched briefly on this earlier, but to begin with, our flagship module is called Access Analyzer. And this is a module which provides that robust rulebook of risks and will be able to report on all of the users and roles in your SAP systems. And what are we reporting on? We're going to be reporting on all of the conflicts and those critical and sensitive access. But we're going to provide more than just what can users and roles in your system do. We're also going to bring in intelligence to indicate whether or not these users have actually utilized that access, which is providing intelligence to indicate whether or not an exploit may have occurred. With that information, we will take it a step further and also provide recommendations on how to go about remediating. So that may be something very simple like deprovision a role from a user, and that will lower the number of risk conflicts. Or it may be more complicated recommendations, such as you have a SAP role that is inherently filled with segregation of duty conflicts, and the tool will recommend how to go about splitting that role to isolate that risk into separate accesses. Next, we have our Access Reviewer module. This is our module which automates that laborious process of performing user access reviews, role recertification processes where role owners are required to go through and sign off that all of the transaction codes and access in a role are still relevant. And with that module, there is a streamlined workflow, a dashboard which allows administrators to check the progress of the reviews to ensure that everything is completed in a timely fashion. Next, we have our emergency access module. You may have heard this referred to as privileged access or firefighting. Super user access is another commonly used term. And what we've done with ERP Maestro's offering is we have all of the expected workflow and requesting functionality in order to provision elevated access to a user. But what we have done to enhance the experience for our customers actually occurs after that firefighting access has been completed. And what we have done is for the reviewer that goes through to sign off that all of the intended activities were completed correctly, we've been able to provide a report that streamlines that review process. What we have done in that report is highlight what access is sensitive in nature and what access can that user perform without the elevated access. So this really helps prioritize that review versus requiring a user or reviewer to go through and sign off on hundreds of line items. Lastly, we have our automated provisioning module, which is a workflow-driven module for creating and changing the access of users in your SAP system. A part of that workflow is a number of approval stages, as well as a proactive risk analysis to ensure that you're not inadvertently introducing risk to your system. In the event that risk is identified, it is then rerouted to a risk owner that can take action on it, be it to reject the request or to assign mitigating control to compensate for that. In today's demo, we will be highlighting aspects of both Access Analyzer and Access Reviewer. And so in order to provide the context of that aspect of the demo, I did want to talk a little bit more about our Access Reviewer module. Traditionally, when organizations are performing an access review, it requires a number of manual steps. It includes items such as downloading all of the user and role information, consolidating that into a consumable format that your reviewers can then go through and take action on. This is often done using a number of different Excel spreadsheets or a SharePoint site, and the tasks to be able to combine and monitor the progress is extremely time consuming and tedious. And then once you've gone through all those steps, then it is going to be always necessary to provide a report to your auditors to show that this has been completed in not just a timely fashion, but it's also been done accurately. So what we see is this is manual across the way. With ERP Maestro, there is the opportunity to automate so many of those steps, where in fact the only manual step after the configuration is completed is to kick off a review, at which point the reviewers will automatically receive email notifications and be brought to the application, where it's a very intuitive and user-friendly screen to be able to approve or reject access. Once those decisions are taken, that any roles that are marked for removal will be automatically removed, and a signed report is generated for your auditors. So today, in today's demo, when we speak about ERP Maestro, you will see many of the aspects of this process. So getting into the demo today, I will pass it to Łukasz to explain some of the first steps in the Adaptive GRC aspect.
Yes, so in this particular presentation today, we will present you a process of third parties risk management, starting from viewing the vendor risk profile. So I will show you the possibility to register your vendors and to perform against each of these vendor risk profile based on the services that the vendor is delivering to your organization and based on the maturity level of the vendor itself. Then we will go into deeper analysis of compliance checks against your vendor. So we will perform compliance assessment. And as a result of compliance assessment, you may have some findings and risks to address. So I will show those findings and risks that are connected with vendors and also applications risk. And we will show how to, address them then in ERP system, and how we can document all the evidence of all the actions that have been performed and all the results of these mitigation actions.
And a part of the addressing the findings and the risks is where we will show ERP Maestro and how the functionality within that application can be leveraged for addressing some of those issues. And for the audience, if it is easier, we do have a handout prepared. You should see that in the dashboard that you can use as a reference. It is identical to the screen you are seeing right now, and you can use that to follow along throughout the demonstration.
Okay, so I will show my screen. Just please confirm that you can see the login screen to the Adaptive GRC application.
We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So let me log into the application. As you can see, our platform supports many areas connected with governance, risk, and compliance. Because this is, as Jan mentioned, this is a single framework for continuous improvement in all of these areas, all your GRC efforts. And we know that for both commercial and non-profit organizations, the challenges tend to be similar. There's a need to improve GRC operational effectiveness and efficiencies, especially in vendors and application risk management. So today we will focus on those areas around third parties, so we will start with possibility to register each vendor in the system. Then I will present you the possibility to risk profile each of the vendor and compare those results. So you may have all the details of your vendor in the system. So to create such a register, and if I will go to one of the vendors, we will see all the details that may be relevant for your processes, GRC processes. So right now I'm in one of the selected vendor. I can see the compliance tab, which presents information about calculated risk profile for the vendor. And this calculation is in two areas, in two dimensions. One is connected with vendor itself, so it's provider risk score, and the other dimension is the service risk scores, which is based on the services that the vendor is delivering to your organization and the importance of those services to your organization. Below you can see some more deeper analysis connected with the compliance assessment of the vendor. I will go to this further. But our application enables you to perform risk profile. So let me go to the results of the risk profile that has been performed for the vendor. Then you will see the context and how this vendor has been assessed for the risk profile. So as you can see, this dot represents a vendor. So the risk level of the vendor is quite high. It is based on some algorithm that calculates it based on the questionnaire answers. I will show it below in a moment. And also we have quite significant services that are delivered by that vendor, because the score is also here in the middle. So you can see the results of this risk profiling. The proposed result is somewhere between desktop review and self-assessment. Such risk profiling can be based in the system based on questionnaires. So to each answer of the question, you might assign some risk. You can decrease or increase the risk level connected with the vendor based on some answers. And so this is the first step to do with your vendor. Then you receive, so you can compare those vendors, because you may have many vendors, and here is an example. So each dot is one vendor. You can mouse over to look at all the details. So here is the most critical vendor for your organization, but also this maturity level of the vendor is quite low because it's high on this grid. Of course, you can make different comparisons, sort vendors by the service risk score, provider risk score. So this is the first step that you should do to know where your vendor's risk is. And the next level, so if we will go back to the vendor that we were looking at, we can also see that the first step was the risk profile, and then the organization decided to do a compliance check. And this is the base. So our Adaptive GRC platform is powerful for audit and assessments, because it holds a consolidated library that control materials in one place. And it enables you to dynamically select those controls that are applicable for that vendor based on the services and governance factors that they need to be compliant with. So here is the result of compliance check. So you can see the score that was achieved by that vendor. You can see some summary of all the controls that were met, not met, and partially met. If you will click here, you will see this library at all, of compliance objectives and all the answers that were delivered by that vendor. So as you can see, we have many areas that we can cover with our content library. So this is like segregation of duties, backup and restore, information security management, and others. You can build this library by yourself, or you can use also you know, some predefined, I mean, prepared libraries that exist on the market. We have our own library that was designed by us. And if you go back, you will see, okay, so you have the results, and you can also present the result in areas that have been covered by this assessment. So here, as you can see, the scope was quite huge, and we can see that there are some gaps in segregation of duties, access authorization management. You can drill down to see details, where was the gap, what was not met or partially met. So here's one issue connected with reauthorization and renewal of all access privileges. So this should be addressed. This is one of the issues that should be addressed, one of the gap. And if we go further, I mean, you will see what has been decided, which risks and findings have been registered based on the results of this assessment. So as you can see, people reviewing this assessment decided to register a finding connected with incorrect access privileges in subsystem. We have also another finding connected with that the risk analysis is not always performed. And we have risks because with those findings, some risks are associated. So there are 3 risks registered. Because one is connected also with that there is a possibility to alter a cost center without authorization. So those areas are gaps that should be addressed, that should be followed up in other modules of the system. So we have a quality module in the system that will help to address those findings and risks. Okay, let me go to the okay, so we are now in the quality manager module. If we will go to the record, okay, I will select this event, this assessment that has been performed. Need to filter it a little bit. Okay, so here it is, this assessment of the vendor. We can see all associated records, so the finding and risk, and we can also see actions that has been registered for each of these findings. So due to the fact that there were incorrect access privileges, we have 2 actions assigned, and we can see the person responsible. So one is connected to perform access review in ERP Maestro using access reviewer. The other one is connected to, I mean, is to show evidence that this has been done. And we can see what is the status here. I mean, each record has its own workflow. It can be, you have all the notification needed. So if there's action to do for you or for somebody else, he or she receives notification. So in this module, we can also see findings from other assessments, from other vendors, or internal findings. You can see all the actions that has been performed. But also there are some risks that we have identified. So we have another possibility to view on this in the risk manager module. In this module, you can keep track of all the risks, also those risks that are associated with vendors. So we enable to keep it in form of a risk register, which can be seen here. So as you can see, there are risk records with all the details, some description. You can see the risk type and calculated risk rating. So here all the risks are sorted based on their risk rating from the highest to the lowest level of risk. So this risk is calculated based on the assessment of the impact and probability. Also, you can configure your own algorithm for calculations, and there are many possibilities in this area. And we can see also that risk that has been identified during our assessment of the vendor. So you can go into details of this risk. You can see what is the probability impact here. You can also see who is responsible, and all the details that can be tracked here in the system. Also, there are all associations presented. So if this risk is, and the source of this risk is an event assessment, it can be visible here. And if it is connected with some application or other details, what is important, our application enables you to interconnect different elements, different entities from the system. And also you receive, as a result of your risk assessment, such Heatmap that is presenting the probability impact level, and each dot presents one risk. So here you can mouse over, you can see those risks also that were registered during risk assessment process. You can do some filtering if you are only interested in some risk types. For example, you can look only on those that are connected with access management, segregation of duties, and financial. If I filter it, then Heatmap will be presenting only those risks that are connected with those areas. So here is one of the risks. And so as you can see, this is those steps that are done here in the system enables you to keep track of your vendors' risks, from starting from registering risk profile for each vendor, making some assessments, audits of vendor that goes deeper into their areas on those services and the applications that they are delivering. And as a result, you can keep track, you can see what is your risk exposure, you can keep track of all the actions that are needed if you go to the quality manager module, that are needed to be performed in context of those risks that were identified. So as you could see that for that finding that was registered, we have some actions, not that one. We can go to events to see those that were connected with the assessment. Okay, and let me filter once again. So now we have also two actions to be performed for ERP Maestro to connected with Access Reviewer. We have another one connected with that risk to perform a segregation of duties risk analyzing. So this completes the process in our system, and now we can go for ERP Maestro to see how access analyzing and access review is performed in the ERP Maestro, and also as a result, all the information can be registered as a result of those actions in the system.
Excellent, thank you for that. So yes, as Lucas said, now that we know what risks are present and we have specific findings we need to address, we'll move over to the ERP Maestro side to get more insight and get to a point where we can remediate some of these findings. So to start with, we'll go down the path of reporting on some segregation of duty risks of the vendors for an organization, and then we'll go and perform a user access review, which will be a more comprehensive recertification of access. So from here, you can see the dashboard of ERP Maestro. This is an enterprise-wide perspective of the risk as it relates to your SAP roles and users. In the top left, you'll see it from the perspective of your users. Within our rulebook, we have provided a criticality level of informational, low, medium, and high. And this is indicating what users have access to. What is almost more important is identifying what have users actually done in the system. And that's what you're able to gain by the red, orange, and green. Those in red have actually completed and executed both sides of a conflict. When you have a user that's completed both sides of a segregation of duties conflict, that implies there is the possibility that there has been a fraudulent activity. So a common example is if a user is able to create a vendor and also pay a vendor, that could lead to a very bad situation. And that would show up here in this red bucket. Those in the orange or the high bucket, those are ones that have completed one side of the conflict. Perhaps they only created a vendor and they have not paid any, but they do have the ability to. So as a security professional, that is an area you need to be paying very close attention to. And then this last bucket would be those users that can do both sides of that conflict, but have not executed either the ability to pay or create a vendor. So there is still the necessity to take action here, but often that green bucket is one of the easier ones to remediate. After talking with the business, it might just be the action of removing that access, and then that risk count would decrease. There are other perspectives on this dashboard, though. It may be relevant for your ongoing activities to review based on business process. You know, being able to put that view at a departmental level. Or perhaps you would like to look at individual users that have a high number of risks that have not been mitigated, or at that role level to see, are there a number of roles in my system that inherently are populated with SODs. And then here in the bottom right, you'll see over time, these risks will decrease. If you're using the tool, using your team to actively go in and remediate and mitigate risks, you'll see a nice downward trend of those risks. But to the specific risks that were identified in Adaptive GRC, let's report on some of those items and see who in the organization has those. So to do that, we're going to go to one of the user reports, and we're going to go to the user risk level details report. And what we will do here is you can look at all of the users that have risks, but for the purpose of reviewing your vendors, what this organization has done is they have assigned a user group, which is a SAP element that allows you to filter and report on specific populations or specific groups of users. So all of the vendors for this organization have been assigned to a contractor user group. So now we will be looking at a much smaller pool of users. And then if you saw in Adaptive GRC, one of the specific risks was related to this risk ID. So let's filter specifically on that. And we now very quickly know which users are vendors and currently have access to SOD FI05. And this is related with the ability to be able to change and open a posting period and make payment. So you would not want anyone, but especially not a vendor, to be able to, after the month-end close, to go back and reopen that period and post a payment to it. So now that we know which users have access, we also have additional insight. So we understand that this is a high risk. This is based on how the rulebook has been defined. That this is related to a finance business process. So you know what department or what manager you may need to discuss on the business side to be able to rectify and remediate this. But most importantly, here you're able to see which users are actually executing one or both sides of that access. So you can see we have 3 users that have in fact completed both tasks, which is an indicator of the potential for fraud, and also puts a higher priority on remediating or mitigating those users. Beyond this information, you can go a step further and then look at what sort of recommendations the tool has for, in this situation, Joshua Sims. So if they have not been using one of those roles, that recommendation will be to deprovision, as an example. So with this report, you would want to remediate or mitigate the risks, and then report back the evidence that it has been taken care of. And that this can be exported to an Excel or CSV file and then uploaded into AdaptiveGRC to ensure that there is evidence that the action has been taken. Now moving to the second action that was prescribed by AdaptiveGRC was to perform a user access review. We will go to the Access Reviewer module of ERP Maestro. And so I have been set up as a reviewer. So this is often a first line manager or that manager that is overseeing a particular vendor. And from the dashboard, you're able to see what type of review this is. So what we're doing is we're doing a user to role review of the contractors. And you're able to see when that review is due. This one is due at the end of the month. And you can see that I've already started my review. I'm 16% of the way through, and I still have about 5 days to complete this. So I'm ready to go ahead and continue on with my review. And what I will see is a line item for every role that's been assigned to this contractor. And as the reviewer, it's my responsibility to recertify this access. So in some situations, I know that Arjun does need this role, so I will approve it. But in others, I'm aware and know that this contractor is no longer performing that function. So in this situation, I know that Arjun is no longer performing any activities that are related to company code 2888. So I have rejected it. There may be some situations where I don't know. I'm not quite sure. There's another manager that it has more insight as to whether or not that access is still needed. And that is where you can use the delegate option. So as the review is progressing, you may not know exactly what every single role is able to do. And so we have provided additional details right here within the review to be able to see what transaction codes are in a particular role. What is the risk associated with that access? And pull in exactly what risks. And so as you go through this, these simple radio buttons will then show the progress of the review. That's as simple as it is, and it could not be much simpler for a reviewer. Once they've reached the 100% mark, they will submit that review to go to a GRC administrator or a compliance manager for final sign-off. Because in the event that there were requests for roles to be removed, the tool will automatically remove those after another stage of approvals. So to see what that looks like, I will log in as an administrator so you can see that dashboard. Okay, so now I am logged in as an administrator, and you'll see that I have some additional options here within the Access Reviewer module. So I'm going to go to the dashboard, and I'm able to see the overall progress. So in this example, there's only one manager that is having to perform a review. But in the event that you have multiple managers, we have some customers that have over 100 managers configured as reviewers. This could be done by different plans and locations, or it could be by job function. You have a number of reviewers that are only looking at finance and others that are only looking at procurement. So many different ways to define the managers. But as an administrator, you have this dashboard where you're able to see the overall progress. And so it may be 2 days before the review is due, and you have a reviewer that is still reading at 0%. And so as the administrator, you can send a reminder to ensure that they do complete that in time. It's a very powerful tool when it comes to monitoring the overall progress. That it's very hard to get this level of information when you have a manual process in place. So once the review has been completed, we talked about the importance of providing evidence. What we would have the administrator do is then generate a signed report. And this signed report will provide a log of all of the actions taken and then can be uploaded to AdaptiveGRC so that all of that evidence has been centralized in a single tool. And with that, that concludes the ERP Maestro side of the demonstration and closes the loop on today's demo. We were able to see a vendor in that risk profile, perform a compliance assessment. From that assessment, we had a number of findings and risks. And then by leveraging ERP Maestro, we were able to get more insight and address those. After addressing those issues, we now have the evidence that we will bring back to the Adaptive GRC platform to ensure that both internal, external auditors and the business are all on the same page. And with that, I will open it up to any questions. We have one question here. Jan, I'll pose this to you. How do you suggest getting buy-in from management to recognize the importance of monitoring and auditing your third-party vendors?
Ryan, just one comment, because I can see there's a question from Tiziano. Can you share the sample question to assess vendor risk profile? That maybe we can share in a moment, but just to answer to your question, Ryan, yeah, it's the question was how we can suggest getting buy-in from management to recognize the importance of monitoring and auditing your third-party vendors. Then it's important and very pragmatic just to start from small but tangible components. Solution for all the problems, it seems to be the perfect one, but sometimes it could be very hard to achieve. Then if we can start from something small like prepare a list of vendors, create list of services that the vendors are delivering, make the correlation between vendors and services and of course create the vendor risk profile. This is something small that could give us a lot of value. And based on our experience, efficient vendor management process could be initiated as a part of vendor consolidation initiative because, always potential cost reduction always work for the top management. This is, in my opinion, the answer for that question. And the question from the audience, then I believe that we can show sample questions in the system. If you can share the screen from Łukasz, he will show how to address that question.
Okay. Please make me a presenter. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so the question was, connected with the risk profile. I showed the results of risk profiling. So let me show you the possible question that we might have for to profile the vendor. So here, this is the provider profile, this part connected with the maturity of the vendor. So for example, the question might be how many years has the vendor been in business? That vendor is less than 2 years, so the risk is quite high because there is no history of the vendor. How many years has the vendor provided services to your organization? Less than 1 year. It's also, you don't have experience with that vendor. And what products and services does the vendor deliver? So another question. Also, for the service profile, the question might be, what is the organizational scope of service provided by the vendor? So if it's for all departments, for just one department, globally or just locally. So each answer can present some risk or some decrease in risk level. Also, we might have some question regarding if some vendor checks has been performed before, if MSA agreement is in place, if the vendor possesses any certifications like ISO or others. This may lower the risk of the vendor. So it depends. Many organizations have different types of risk profiling or different questions in such questionnaires, but most of the questions are similar, or those questions that enable you to assess the risks in many different areas connected with the vendor. So I hope I answered your question.
Excellent. No, that was perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we actually don't have any more questions, but please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be more than happy to have a conversation offline and help you with anything that you may be experiencing right now within your organization. And again, thanks again. Thank you, AdaptiveGRC, Łukasz and Jan, for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure just to attend this webinar.
Well, everyone, please have a great day.